The Invention of Shoes is a story in which there's a king called King Hobu, and there's a minister who is Gobu. All right, and there's a problem that the king faces in this story, and the problem is this, that his feet gets dusty. Let's find out if he and his ministers are able to find a cure to how to keep his legs and feet free from dust. All right. So King Hobu lived in his palace as the king of his kingdom. His subjects were very happy for what their king had given them, and they thought that there was no kingdom where the subjects has comparable prosperity. So King Hobu's kingdom was a prosperous one, and his subjects means the people or the citizens were very happy under his rule. Hobu was well aware that his kingdom was contented and none suffered from the want of anything. So everybody was fine. Everybody was happy in his rule, and he was a good king. This shows that he was a good king. However, there's a problem that King Hobu was facing, and let's find out what. Hobu was well aware that his kingdom was contented and none suffered from want of anything. One night, however, Hobu was unable to sleep, and after a long while, he had began wondering about the cause of his sleepless nights. And what was the problem? The problem was the relation between his feet and the ground, right? And he wondered why his feet used to get dirty. Why did the dust cover his feet? Finally, he decided to talk about this to his minister, whose name was Gobu, right? So, when he talked about this to Gobu, he didn't have an answer, and he didn't know what to tell the king. However, the king wanted to have a solution to this. So Gobu, he first advised the king to sit in his room, sit on a sofa with his feet tucked under the legs. However, as soon as the king saw Gobu before him, he said, "Listen, Gobu Rai, all day yesterday and throughout the night, I thought why my feet should get dusty as soon as I step on the ground." So that was a big concern for the king, and he is expressing it to his minister. Gobu's assistants too had appeared on the scene, and everybody now are engaged in finding out what is the problem and why is the king's feet dirty. And Gobu also pretended as if he along with the other assistants are of no use. He says, "You Lord only take your wages and never attend to the king's duty at all. And what irregularity is this in my own kingdom, that my own land smears with dust?" So the king is very angry, and King Hobu is telling his subjects that, "What are you people here for? Right? I am paying you so much, yet my feet are dirty and dusty, and you have nothing to do about it." So when Gobu also heard this, along with the other assistants, all of them, they were in great distress and they didn't know what to say. And the whole environment of the palace changes, because now they know that the king is not happy and he wants a solution to his problem. All the learned people and the scholars were called to the court, and they were asked to give advice on the question that the king has put. All the servants, all the obedient servants, they had sleepless nights. In the kitchen also, there was a lot of ruckus, and the food on the pan was there was no food being cooked on the fire because the palace was filled with weeping and tears rolled down from the cook's cheeks, and tears also ran from Gobu's eyes down his white beard. Everybody was crying, the cook and the assistants and everyone. Even Gobu was crying. And then, when they were crying, Gobu's eyes, his tears rolled down from his eyes and it came to his white beard. Then Gobu puts his head on the ground immediately before the king, Hobu's feet. So he cries, and Gobu puts his hand on the ground immediately before Hobu's feet and said, "If your feet do not take the dust, how do we get the dust from your own feet?" So in a way, he is trying to impress the king by saying that the dust that you step on, the dust that gets onto your feet is so important for us. It's so precious for us. If your feet doesn't touch the dust, then how do we get the dust from your feet? So the dust that comes out from your feet is very, very precious to us. The king heard, closed his mouth and eyes, and became ponderous as something passed through his head. Gobu and his men did not understand what was going on, why Hobu had closed his eyes, and whether he had fallen asleep. Suddenly, Hobu began rocking his body. He opened his eyes and said, "That's true, but get rid of the dust." So, yeah, he was impressed when Gobu said that the dust of your feet is so precious to us. And in fact, Hobo was impressed. However, he still wanted a solution to that. And he still wanted to know why is there dust in his feet all the time. Gobu said, but we must take the dust. Do we take the feet instead or what? Gobu's assistant said, yes, yes, very true. Dust of feet, dust of feet. Hobu said, on the other hand, if you don't get the dust from my feet, then because there are only if you don't get the dust from my feet because there are only the feet and no dust, you will take your wages for nothing. So the king is also telling them that if you do not find a solution to the problem that I am facing, then you are taking your wages for no reason. I'm paying you for nothing. Gobu said, but we don't take our wages for nothing. Hobu said, listen, Gobu and you all, why do I keep so many servants and scientists with the highest degrees? So now the king is asking the scientists the number of servants that he has kept, and he is offended. He is upset that none can help them. The king's words made the minister see darkness before him. So the minister didn't know what to do, and he didn't have an answer. And they had such qualified scientists, wise engineers, technicians, and craftsmen. Nobody had an answer to it, and all put on their glasses, took their seats, sniffed up 19 barrel of snuff. So what did they? They came up to one solution, and the solution was this: that bought um, they bought 50 brooms. Okay, here it is. They bought 50,000 brooms, and then they all started brooming the city. So with the broom, they started sweeping the whole city. But what happened? Even if they did that, the city actually was full of dust. And there was no solution to it. That was not a good solution that they found out. The king said that you tried to get rid of the dust. However, instead you have filled the whole world entirely with dust. So the king was not at all happy. The broom idea was absolutely a nonsense idea. Immediately after that, 21 lakh water porters, they came to rescue. And what did they do? With leather skin water carriers on their arms, they were ordered to run speedily in swamps and ponds, and water holes were left only with mud, and no boat could move even on the water. So the whole kingdom was turned into muddy puddles. All those ponds which had water creatures in them, now there is no water in the water bodies, and all the ponds had dried and become muddy. The merchandise sank into the bottom. Merchandise means all the belongings or the artifacts or the things that you keep in the house, everything sank on the bottom of the mud. And the whole land began suffering from diseases like cold and fever. The king said, such stupid ideas, they have killed the dust to turn into watery muddy. Again, the king was not happy. Again, all called for a conference. Every qualified person took his seat. Their heads seemed to spin round, and they saw nothing before them and never found an end to the dust. The scientists were sitting amidst a crowd of royal officers and lazy observers who had been perplexed with the results from the scientific advice. Perplexed means surprised, and by now a commotion arose in the crowd. And none of the scientists, none of the scholars, none of the engineers that the king had, nobody was able to find a quick solution, a better solution, which was effective and which could make the king happy. The people around the scientists liked the advice so much that they produced at once. Some others said, keep the king at home. See, there's no opening through which dust can enter. But that was also not a good idea. Uh, the king remained silent for a very long time and refrained from making any comment immediately because he argued silently to himself on advantages and disadvantages which were hidden in the advice, and whether the advice would help his subjects more and him less, and what sort of result would follow from it. So the king did not like the idea that somebody said that he should be staying indoors and not come out at all. In the end, the king said very slowly but quite audibly, uh, without, however, knowing whether he spoke to himself or his advisers. He says, "That's a great truth," and paused for a few minutes, and then he repeats that that's a great truth. But my mind has doubts, and paused again for a while. At last he said firmly and loudly, "If I am shut in the day and night from the wall outside because I am weary of the mud, I'm afraid my kingdom will turn into mud." So the king told his concern that I don't want to stay inside the palace, because if I stay in the palace, then the whole kingdom will be turned into mud, which already was happening, right? And the king had to stop asking those people to put water from the leather carriers into the land. Some in the crowd began shouting, a leather man, my money for a leatherman, my money for a leatherman. Where's the leatherman? Get the leather, get the skin. Our king will reward the earth and the leatherman for giving the naked earth a nice mantle." So somebody is calling a person who is a leatherman. So this is a man who deals with leather. The others said, "Covering the earth of dust under a curtain will make the great deed of the king of the earth last forever." All, however, said immediately, "It can be done easily if we find a proper leatherman." So now they are looking for a leatherman who can put leather on the dust on which the king puts his legs. The king's men went on circulating his command to bring the proper leatherman. And then thus they find one proper leatherman who comes to the king's rescue. Uh, Even the muddy lanes in the villages, prompted by their companion, the town crier produced such a noise everywhere with drums, pipes, and cymbals that a large number of countrymen began thinking about seriously if they should all flee the land immediately. So now they're looking for a leatherman, and the proper they were looking for the proper leatherman, and everybody, the king's men went on circulating his command to bring the proper leatherman to his notice. Okay. The proper leatherman was available nowhere, nor was they appropriate. So although they were all looking for the proper leatherman, but they actually couldn't come across a person who was a proper leatherman, right? In the end, an aged leatherman, and by his own word, the supposed chief of the leatherman clan, entered the king's hall slowly, approached the king's presence with his head bowed very low, stood before him, bowed his head even lower, and said with a very short and hardly audible, very dry laugh, right? If permission is kindly granted, he said, I can say what will fulfill the desire easily. So this leatherman, who was an old leatherman, and he claimed that he was the leader of all the leathermen, he started saying that I can help you, king, and I can help you keep your feet clean and off the dust. Cover your own 2 feet, and it will be no longer necessary to cover the earth. So that was his idea. He said that you should cover your feet instead of fighting with the dust. The crowd in the hall roared in anger and howled at the old leatherman. Are you a leatherman or what? Say at once if you can remove the dust or not. We don't want to know what you think of the king's feet or any other feet. So the king's ministers still don't get it, and they were shouting at the leatherman when he said that you should cover your feet. The crowd in the hall roared. Sorry. The king gestured for silence and said, "Peace," he muttered. "Will it be so easy?" He said clearly to the audience. And he's asking about what is easy? Will it be easy? What is easy? Will it be so easy to cover my feet? Right? Is it so easy when all the land is already under the dead weight of thinking? The minister said, keep the trifler shut in prison with shackles. So this is for the Leatherman. He's saying that, oh, this old Leatherman is of no use. Put him in the jail. What poor suggestion is he giving? The king is not at all happy and he wanted him to see in the prison. The minister said, keep the trifler shut in prison with shackles. The old man sat facing the king's feet and enveloped and enveloped them neatly in cover of a leather. But the old man, he didn't stop there. He actually made he actually took the cover of leather and he enveloped the king's feet. So he covered the king's feet with the leather. Goburai the minister said, I also had thought so. Somehow the fellow has found it out. From that day began the custom of wearing shoes. Gobu was forgiven and the earth was rescued. So when this old man showed that this is how you're going to protect your feet from dust, just wear your shoes, right? Cover your feet with the leather, and then the dust will be off. And then Gobu, the minister, he was relieved, and he knew, although it was not his idea, but he pretended and he said that, oh, I already knew that this could be done. And from that day onward, the king started wearing shoes made of leather, and that is when the custom of wearing shoes for others also started to keep the dust away. And with this incident, Gobu was also forgiven, and the whole kingdom, all the people and the subjects who were supposed to die because of the king's wrath, now have been rescued. So that's the whole story of the invention of shoes, right? If you have any questions, any queries, please feel free to type your questions to the comment box. If you have any grammar topic or any literature chapter to be understood, you can always write it down in the comment box. Thank you so much.